Molly went to work on Monday, right? Finished her job on Monday, left without ceremony, went home, and then a report comes out. That report comes out the next morning. Instead of Molly showing up to work, she puts out an Instagram post. And in that Instagram post, you guys remember, one thing she didn't mention was anybody by name, including Stephen A. Smith. The relationship with Stephen A. Smith, one of the worst kept secrets in the business, is that they have a good relationship. They don't. To the point, someone you work with for 10 years, you don't even mention them when you're gone. The last part of it is, this is the twist.
Marcellus Wiley exposes the real reason why Molly left ESPN. Check out what he had to say, and then I'll come back with my comments.
ESPN executive reveals why Molly Qerim's exit was so abrupt. Now, this is interesting for a couple reasons. One, just the mere fact that an executive is going to tell us why Molly's gone and Molly hasn't said a word. Interesting. And
That's
two,
rare.
why would an executive at ESPN talk about talent that's no longer on their network? That's not how they usually roll. Maybe they're trying to frame this one a little different. So let's read into this. Speaking to the Athletics' Richard Deitch in a yet-to-be-released podcast episode, ESPN President of Content, Burke Magnus, publicly addressed Qerim's exit for the first time. And when it comes to the reason why she left the network before her contract expired at the end of the year, the ESPN executive pointed to the initial report from Sports Business Journal's Austin Karp, which first revealed the UConn alum's impending departure. The one thing that was unexpected was the timing of all this, Magnus told Deitch. She, Molly, put out a statement because there was a report on it, so it kind of got out of our respective controls once that happened. While Karp's report stated that Qerim will be leaving ESPN at the end of the year, a subsequent social media post from the longtime First Take host made it seem like the timeline would be more immediate. Yes, she did. Apparently, at least one, and maybe both, of the parties decided that it was best to part ways now rather than spending the next 3 months with uncertainty surrounding the show and its host.
Yeah, it was crazy that she left abruptly like that. When I heard the news, I thought it was going to at least last the rest of the year, Molly. But I guess she won her money. Contract situation didn't work itself out. You got Stephen A. Smith. He's the mouthpiece for the bosses. So he's kind of letting it be known it was a contract thing before things went public. So was there some friction between Molly and Stephen A? They played it cool on TV. They had their moments. Molly is known for cutting people off, pushing certain narratives and movements in the middle of a sports debate. So I'm interested to see what's really going on in the contract talks with Molly and why she left abruptly.
Blah, blah, blah. All right, let's talk about this for real. Let's go behind the scenes because Burke Magnus just told us that, hey, it got out of our hands because Molly confirmed that report but put some immediacy on it that we weren't expecting. We both were kind of on the same page of let's just ride this out to the end of the year after your contract's over and then peace, goodbye. Well, I think that is very interesting for so many reasons. So let's just reframe everything first. Reset. Molly went to work on Monday, right? Finished her job on Monday, left without ceremony, went home, and then a report comes out. That report comes out the next morning. Instead of Molly showing up to work, she puts out an Instagram post. And in that Instagram post, you guys remember, one thing she didn't mention was anybody by name, including Stephen A. Smith. Now, I've left a show or two before, and trust me, you're going to name some names when you leave that. Just think about Shannon Sharp when he left Undisputed. Goodness, it took about 10 minutes of all the names he dropped. That's my point. Molly didn't do that. So that lets you know already there's some friction.
Yeah, definitely. It looked like there was some bad blood going on. And again, by her not even acknowledging Stephen A. Smith, the person that really put her on and kept her on the show, especially when the ESPN had their cuts, they removed a lot of people from their network. She was able to maintain and stay there. So was Stephen A. Smith just being a good friend? What really happened? Why was Molly not cut during the ESPN layoffs? So that's another thing people aren't really talking about. She didn't really have the talent to really be there long term, but she was able to survive those cuts. So if anybody deserves a thank you, it should be Stephen A. Smith. Without Stephen A. Smith, there wouldn't be a First Take and there wouldn't be a Molly Qerim.
Behind the scenes. Okay, so they're reporting that it's supposed to be the end of the year. Molly, by action, says it's right now. Instead of I'm leaving now, I'm leaving right now. She made it immediate. And then Stephen A. Smith makes the statement. Now, interesting once again, see, peep all these differences, right? These contradictions in terms of how they usually move and how they're moving with Molly. Max Kellerman left. Stephen A. Smith didn't even show up for the last day. Remember that? Interesting. And we all know that typically they don't talk about talent when they're gone. They just say, thank you for your services, and we wish you well. This is a little different for many reasons. So when they're trying to paint it, it looks a lot different. Here we go. This is what's going on behind the scenes on the real. Molly was going through a contract negotiation, obviously, and that was not going well, obviously, because Molly wasn't getting what she wanted. What did Molly want? Molly wanted to do other things at the network, which it included hosting her own show, kind of the Max Kellerman plan. I'll leave First Take, that's fine. Y'all got other shows out here, or we could create a show, whatever it may be. Let me land on my feet within the network, still be at the worldwide leader, and do my thing. Now, that was.
I don't understand why Molly was really trying to move up as far as ESPN, get her own programming. I get it. She was a good-looking face, can read a teleprompter. That was pretty much it. Yeah, she puts little narratives here and there, but is she worth making multiple millions per year on First Take and having other programming, having her own shows? I don't really think so. Again, she fit her role within ESPN First Take, but having other shows and being the main person, she's not really talented like that. She was a one-trick pony, and she maximized it, got a lot of money, but I think she kind of overplayed her hand by leaving ESPN and First Take.
Wasn't happening. They weren't signing off on her not only hosting another show, but doing other shows within the network. So what happened was offers for her to stay there. Now, reportedly, she's making like around $500,000 a year. Now, contrast that to $20 million a year for Stephen A. Smith, and he's number one on the show and you number two on the show, you could feel a certain type of way. But hey, you got to only eat what you kill. And they didn't feel that she was killing it to the point where they would make her a better offer. And
her trying to compare what she's making to Stephen A., you can't really do that. Yeah, technically she was a number two, but she was a number two by default because she was the moderator and the host of the show. But she wasn't really like a huge talent at the network on the show. Again, try to look your best, look good, put on your makeup, read this teleprompter, push a few narratives here and there with the whole feminist thing, and that was pretty much it. So for her to make 500 and thinking, okay, Stephen A. making 20, I'm making 500K. Should I be making 2, 3, 4, 5 million? In her mind, maybe so. But in actuality, Molly, your best bet, maybe $1 million at the max. But you still keep that deal and try to continue to move up, and maybe you get a show in the future. But again, she overplayed her hand, thinking that she was worth more than what she was making.
When I say we, I'm not just talking about Burke Magnus. I'm not just talking about all the other bosses that Stephen A. Smith mentions. I'm talking about Stephen A. Smith as well. Because remember, he's an executive producer on that show. And as he will always remind you, that's his show. Think about it. So Molly wants more money to stay on that show. If I'm going to stay, you're going to have to pay me for my suffering. Or give me what I want, give me some more, and let me go do more. They balked at both. So now, what else is going on behind the scenes? The relationship with Stephen A. Smith, one of the worst kept secrets in the business, is that they have a good relationship. They don't, right? They kind of tired on each other, et cetera. Not going to go into all the messy details, but the point is they weren't cool with each other to the point someone you work with for 10 years, you don't even mention them when you're gone. And you don't even give them that like partner heads up on air. Like, hey, we did this thing together. This thing is over, right? So that.
Yeah, you can see the tension between Stephen A. and Molly starting to brew up. Again, they had their good moments. You know, Stephen A. threw some lines at her, looked like he was flirting, a lot of good compliments. But by Molly trying to insert herself in a conversation with the contributors, again, pushing narratives, being the feminist, just cutting people off. Yeah, be the moderator, be the host, stay in your lane, let the dudes talk football, basketball, whatever sports. But by her trying to, cut in line and really trying to be a voice, I guess she was letting the network know, like, I can do this on my own TV show, my own programming. But again, she should have just played her role, stopped cutting people off, and I think it would have ended better. Maybe she would have got more money if she just, again, played her role, shut up when people were talking. If you're asked to speak, so be it. But you got to stay in that moderator role. And I think, again, she overplayed her hand, thought she was bigger than the program. And they had to let her know, like, take it or leave it. The money you're making, maybe she should have created her own content, kind of like what Stephen A. Smith is doing, and and then present it to the show, but she needs the infrastructure. I don't think a lot of people are going to view her content outside of ESPN and First Take.
Unless you know the business was ugly behind the scenes to the point and the personal relationship that I won't even give you that grace. I won't even give you that out. So that's how that went down. Their relationship, not good. Okay? Now, the last part of it is, this is the twist. She wanted to do other stuff. No, basically. You wanted to host your own show. No, basically. You want more money? Not much. Now, who signs off on all the money there? Think about it. Think about it. The bosses. But who are the bosses? That's Stephen A. Smith as well. When there was a Kenyan, Perkins had his deal. And when Perkins was up, remember, Perkins was getting a day job rate, and he turned that into $700,000 a year job. Perkins just talked about that recently, about how Stephen A. Smith has that pull. Stephen A. Smith even talked about that when he checked Cam Newton recently, talking about, hey, I've hooked a lot of guys up with money around here. Dan Orlovsky raised his hand in that moment. Ryan Clark, obviously, another beneficiary of Stephen A. Smith. When he signs off on you, when he signs for you, you get what you want. But guess what? There's a flip to it as well. When he doesn't sign off on you, when he doesn't sign for you, you don't get what you want. And
yeah, Molly didn't get what she wanted. She wanted that money. She wanted an increase in pay, more duties at ESPN, and Stephen A. Smith didn't sign off on it, even though he's really a small crumb with ESPN and Disney, but he's a noticeable crumb. So he has some power being the executive producer of First Take, but he can also co-sign and get a lot of people some money. We've seen it with Kendrick Perkins, Cam Newton, Ryan Clark, just to name a few, Dan Orlovsky. So there's people to where if he co-sign you, you can stay in ESPN and get that money. If he doesn't, you're going to be out the door like Molly Qerim and Max Kellerman.
That's obviously a Kerry Champion, a Max Kellerman, Shannon Sharp, even because of his relationship with his bosses. Now, think about this. That relationship allows him to know information that others don't and have influence that others don't. How much you can get paid. You can get the money if I sign off on it, or you can get what you want if I sign off on it. But the thing is, he didn't. How did he know so much about Shannon's situation? And as soon as Shannon went through that fire, he was the first one on air saying, come on, man, and talking on both sides because of the bosses, because he was in that meeting.
Yeah, Stephen A. tried to stay on code, act like he doesn't know, but in actuality, he knows everything that's going on. He's privy to information. He chills with the bosses, goes out to dinner, probably on a conference call when they're having these meetings with talent. So he knows what's going on, even though he tries to act like he doesn't know what's going on. So he'll give you a little bit of nuggets of information, but at the same time, try to hold stuff back until his bosses officially releases that information. So Stephen A. Smith knows what's going on, and he understood that if Molly didn't get her money, she was going to leave, and maybe he called her bluff, and she's out the door.
He was in that meeting knowing what the fate of Shannon Sharp was months before Shannon Sharp knew, months before the world knew. That's my point. So he runs with the bosses. And the last point that I wanted to make is one of the bosses in particular, everyone knows in the industry who that person is, but no need to out him. The point is that person, along with Stephen A. Smith, ain't seeing the talent, not seeing the love for Molly Qerim. And she knew this. So when that report comes out, I guess it triggers her, or more importantly, she's like, why am I sitting in a situation that I know won't get better? Think about it. You too. Beat it up in the comments. Tell me your thoughts about it. But when you know you need to do something and you know it's best for you, what you waiting for? I think Molly woke up that morning, Tuesday morning, said, what am I waiting for?
Yeah, she knew that talks weren't really ramping up. She knew she wasn't going to get her money, and there may be some potential opportunities elsewhere. So instead of staying around for another few months to the end of the year, might as well act now and try to see if you can cultivate those relationships outside of ESPN and try to land another job. She'll be perfect for like political and news stations just because she's able to push certain narratives. So maybe ESPN was a good stepping stone, and being in news networks in the political realm, maybe that'll help Molly out. Don't know if she's talented enough to host a podcast and get viewers, but she'll land on her feet feet eventually. But again, I think she overplayed her hand and should have navigated a little bit more. $500,000 is a lot of money. You can't compare it to $20 million with Stephen A. Smith. Maybe you get to the $1 million range, but it may take a little time to negotiate. I felt as though she rushed the process. I know these contract talks go on for many months and maybe a full calendar year, but again, I think she should have took her time before leaving ESPN. Maybe there's some beef going on with her and Stephen A. Smith, and I'm sure it's going to be exposed in the very near future.